What kind of meditation did the Buddha practice to attain enlightenment? Right concentration. Right concentration is the crucial final step on the Buddha's path to happiness, the Eightfold Path. When the mind is tranquil and stable, obstacles that hinder happiness cannot arise. Moreover, during meditation, we can maintain a steady focus on the mental objects arising along with awareness. Concentration helps us break through the deceptive appearances of these objects, allowing us to clearly see their impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature. With right concentration, we can intensify our meditation practice, making significant progress on the path. Commonly, when we say someone is focused, we might refer to anything from being engrossed in a TV show, to concentrating on a chess game, to planning a crime. However, the kind of concentration that the Buddha taught as part of the Eightfold Path has three special characteristics. It is wholesome, one-pointed, and uses mindfulness to develop wisdom. This type of concentration is not easy to achieve. Like other skills, it requires step-by-step training. The mind must be trained. It may take several meditation sessions or even years of diligent effort to develop this type of wholesome, one-pointed, and mindful concentration. Once this concentration is achieved, the meditator must continue to practice until they can attain it easily, at will. From the beginning, we have emphasized the importance of finding a good teacher to guide us in our practice. A teacher can provide substantial help as we strive to develop concentration. Many questions may arise as we work to perfect our abilities. If a good teacher is not available, the next best resource is books dedicated to this subject. Furthermore, it is very difficult for the mind to become calm enough to achieve concentration if we are constantly dealing with the issues of everyday life. We recommend setting aside some time specifically for meditation practice, such as a full week free from other obligations. Attending an intensive meditation retreat might be the best way to start. Meditation. Not all concentration is wholesome. For example, a cat waiting to catch prey focuses all its attention on the prey. The cat's focus is very intense, but it is not wholesome at all. Wholesome concentration is free from greed, hatred, and delusion. In our daily lives, we can use intense focus to solve a math problem, repair a car, or prepare a complicated dish. This kind of focus can be wholesome if it is stimulated by wholesome thoughts like compassion, love, or kindness. It will be unwholesome if it arises from unwholesome states like greed, hatred, or malice. Unwholesome states, including the 5 hindrances, are often present in our everyday focus more than we might realize. For example, when you try to solve a puzzle, you might be driven by attachment to getting a high score on a test. When repairing a car, you might feel averse to the dirty work. While cooking that elaborate meal, you might be thinking angrily about a family member who will enjoy it. The type of meditation taught by the Buddha does not include these hindrances. Similarly, if we attain concentration while any hindrance is present, it is also unwholesome. For example, you might achieve some level of concentration while experiencing the hindrance of sloth and torpor. You might be in a semi-drowsy state, dreaming of pleasant things. Later, you might delude yourself into thinking you have gained some insight during meditation. That is delusion, not wholesome concentration. Meditating when the mind is angry is also unwholesome. You can tell your meditation is incorrect in such cases because you will feel tense, anxious, and exhausted. Some meditators even get headaches because they force the mind to focus on the meditation object while feeling anger or frustration. In such cases, you need to practice right effort to overcome these hindrances and create a wholesome state of mind before starting. The worst mistake a meditator can make is to spend meditation time ruminating on a loss or other unwholesome thoughts. Of course, bringing mindful awareness to these states is insight meditation. Thus, the first step in establishing right concentration is ensuring that our practice is wholesome by preventing hindrances from attacking the mind. Here are additional steps to achieve concentration during meditation. During meditation, let go of all thoughts attached to circumstances, thoughts, people, and habits. Do not think about family, friends, relatives, career, salary, taxes, possessions, or responsibilities. Tell yourself, I want to dedicate this special time to perfecting myself. I do not want to sit on this meditation cushion to think about all the usual things. I will use this time well. Do not worry about unfinished tasks, mistakes you have made, or potential mistakes with others. Remember that the past is gone and what is done cannot be undone. Spend a few moments cultivating thoughts of loving kindness to make the mind feel pleasant and refreshed for meditation. Then take 3 deep breaths. Focus the mind on the meditation object you have chosen, such as the breath. Keep the mind in the present moment. Persistently strive to keep the mind from wandering. If one of the 5 hindrances arises, overcome it by using the methods we have learned. Cultivate a wholesome state of mind that opposes the hindrance. For example, if greed arises, cultivate equanimity. Allow the mind to become light and clear. Once the hindrance is overcome, redirect the mind back to the chosen meditation object, such as the breath. Remember, the purpose of this session is to practice the meditation method. At this time, you should not delve into the details of what you have experienced, but maintain mindful focus on the meditation object. After each instance of achieving wholesome concentration, you will find it easier and more enthusiastic. No matter how brief or fragile the wholesome concentration is, the key is that you have achieved something by overcoming old habits and transforming the mind. While practicing meditation to train the mind, be content with any level of wholesome concentration you can achieve. When meditating, the tranquility of the mind recharges your energy, making you feel balanced and beginning to believe in the practice. Joy arises because concentration overcomes hindrances. Even in daily life, we need some level of wholesome concentration to live ethically. Wholesome concentration helps us adhere to wholesome thoughts, words, and deeds, and avoid unwholesome ones. Wholesome concentration helps us deal with daily issues fairly and with equanimity. Conversely, our success in developing concentration depends on a solid ethical foundation. As our sense of ethics improves, so does our concentration. The type of meditation we have been discussing so far can be called ordinary wholesome concentration. This type of concentration is relatively easy to achieve. However, the insight arising from ordinary wholesome concentration can also transform life. It helps you avoid unwholesome thoughts, words, and deeds. You do not want to do anything that might hinder the liberation of the mind. This is why the Buddha said that wholesome concentration encompasses all wholesome mental states. When the Buddha was still Prince Siddhartha Gautama, his father, the king, prevented him from seeing anything that might lead him to the spiritual path. Eventually, when the prince saw 4 sights, a sick person, an old person, a dead person, and a monk, it marked a turning point for him. Contemplating these 4 sights, Prince Siddhartha attained a state of concentration. Insight arose concerning the truth of suffering. Therefore, he decided not to return to a life of sensual pleasures in the palace, but to seek a solution to liberate beings from suffering. The same can be true for us. When we observe things with wholesome concentration, ordinary events in daily life can prompt deeper contemplation. Insight arising from this calm mind can convince us that we have been entangled in suffering for long enough, and that it is time to start a new chapter in our lives. We gain a new perspective and insight into the suffering in life. We see the futility of chasing happiness through sensual pleasures. We recognize that material satisfaction comes at the cost of suffering and anxiety. We no longer try to rationalize our misery as happiness. The path out of suffering also becomes clear. Because concentration helps us realize the truth in the Buddha's teachings, we feel more motivated to develop deeper states of concentration, so we can attain deeper insight. Stages of meditation. Deep concentration can lead to profound realizations known as jhana, or meditation absorption. Jhana is always wholesome and focused. However, it is essential to remember that this concentration is not yet right concentration if mindfulness is absent. With complete concentration, our progress toward enlightenment is accelerated. Here we discuss concentration in a very specific sense. Whenever the mind focuses on any object, regardless of its significance, concentration arises. However, we often only see the overall picture without paying attention to the individual details that make up that scene. For example, when reading a book, our eyes focus on one word, then the next, or one sentence, then the next, and this information is processed by the brain. We do not read each letter individually. The mind is so quick and the ability to focus so intense that we perceive entire sentences or lines at once. If we slow down this process, we can become aware of each moment of concentration. The purpose of meditation practice is to maintain awareness so that concentration can flow into each successive moment continuously and without interruption. However, this level of mindfulness is very challenging. Each moment of the mind is so brief that it is almost unimaginable. Someone once asked the Buddha for an example of a moment of the mind. He replied that he could not provide an example because it is impossible to describe the fleeting nature of each moment. However, suppose there is a very fine, delicate spider web and you want to bring a candle to burn it. How long would it take to burn the web? Almost as soon as the candle is brought close, the web burns away. The Buddha taught that in such a brief moment, thousands of moments of the mind can arise, develop, and pass away. With this analogy, the Buddha aimed to convey that the mind's quickness is almost inconceivable. Each fleeting moment of the mind includes 3 even briefer moments: the moment of arising, the moment of maturing, and the moment of passing away. Immediately after the moment of passing away, another moment of the mind arises, following the same process. These 3 brief moments form a complete moment of the mind. Concentration arises with only a few moments of the mind, perhaps 1 in a billion moments. Complete concentration can penetrate to the level where each moment of the mind arises, matures, and passes away. Once we directly observe the arising and passing away of each moment of the mind, we no longer doubt the truth of impermanence, and we naturally let go. This is why we need complete concentration to see reality clearly and attain enlightenment. Complete concentration involves several stages or levels. There are in fact 8 stages of meditation, jhana, that an unenlightened person can achieve, and any of these stages can be used to reach enlightenment. However, to simplify, we will only discuss the first 4 stages. At the very least, one must attain the first stage of jhana to develop the mental strength necessary to perceive things as they truly are. Achieving each of the subsequent 3 stages of concentration makes it easier to recognize the truth. In the second stage, concentration improves due to the absence of the thought process. In the third stage, the level of mindfulness becomes more intense, and in the fourth stage, even more so, with the mind becoming completely purified by equanimity. The first stage of meditation. To attain the first jhana, the mind must be free from hindrances and establish right concentration. Then 5 mental factors, jhana factors, must be present. Initial application vitakka, sustained application vikara, rapture, piti, happiness, sukha, and one-pointedness, ekaggata. Any of these 5 jhana factors can arise alone or together, depending on different conditions. For example, happiness arises in the absence of ill will. When drowsiness is gone, initial application can arise. When restlessness is absent, we have rapture. Whenever we have a moment of right concentration, rapture will arise due to the absence of the 5 hindrances, and a few other jhana factors may also appear. It is a wonderful feeling to have one of these 5 jhana factors present. You may think you are in bliss, but this wonderful feeling is not jhana, even if these factors arise together, one by one. There must be a systematic method to attain the first jhana. This method begins with normal right concentration. The joy you find in this state will lead to happiness. Rapture and happiness are 2 different feelings. Rapture arises from the hopeful anticipation of happiness. Happiness arises from the contentment that your hope has been fulfilled. Here is an analogy to help distinguish between rapture and happiness. Imagine you are walking in a desert. There is no water or shade, only sand. You walk on, tired and thirsty. Suddenly you see someone coming towards you with wet hair. Overjoyed, you ask, "Where did you find water?" There is an oasis just ahead. As you move towards the oasis, you first feel joyful, rapture, when you see water from a distance. As you get closer, your joy rapture increases. Then you jump into the water, drink it, and dance along the shore, feeling cool and refreshed. Oh, what bliss! This is happiness. People often confuse happiness with excitement. For example, when someone wins the lottery, they express their excitement by shouting, jumping up and down, hugging, crying, and laughing. They think, "I feel so happy." But that feeling is not true happiness. It is excitement. When true happiness arises, excitement vanishes and you feel relaxed and peaceful. True happiness leads to calmness. When the mind settles, it naturally becomes more stable. When your concentration deepens, you can proceed to train the mind to achieve absorption, jhana, with the following steps. Keep the mind focused on the breath or any chosen meditation object. At this point, do not observe other arising objects like sounds or thoughts. Let go of anything that arises and return to the breath. Repeat this until the mind loses interest in anything else and stays with the meditation object. Gradually, the breath or other chosen object may seem to fade and be replaced by a mental image or feeling, called the sign of concentration, nimitta. This becomes your new meditation object, and you stay with it. When the mental image also fades and the mind dwells on itself, you have reached the first absorption, first jhana. How does this happen? As right concentration deepens, the mind gradually loses interest in anything else and stays focused on the meditation object, like the breath. When you continue focusing on this object, it becomes so subtle that you no longer notice it. But at the point of focus, like the tip of the nose, the memory of the breath or the meditation object persists. This memory becomes a very pleasant feeling called the sign of concentration. This sign can appear as an image, light, or gentle touch, depending on the individual. Whatever form the sign takes, stay with it. Use the same sign every time you meditate. Do not share it with others, as each person's sign is different and could confuse others. Initially, the in-breath and out-breath are your meditation objects. Now you use the sign as your meditation object. The Buddha encouraged his disciples to practice, develop, and perfect the sign. Practice attaining the sign repeatedly until you can control it entirely, so that whenever you want to experience it, the sign will appear and you can merge your mind with it. When the sign first appears during meditation, it seems stable. Thus, concentration can arise based on it. But when focusing entirely on the sign, you begin to see that the sign changes moment by moment. Gradually, like all other conditioned phenomena, the sign will pass away. When the sign also disappears, the mind has no other object but itself to focus on, so the mind concentrates on itself. At that moment, initial application, vitakka, briefly appears. This is the beginning of wholesome one-pointedness. When initial application is sustained for a few seconds, sustained application, vikara, can arise. Now the mind is firmly fixed on the object. Since the mind no longer wanders, a more subtle rapture arises, followed by an even more subtle happiness. These 4 jhana factors initiate absorption. Now the 5 factors of the first jhana, initial application, sustained application, rapture, happiness, and one-pointedness, work together as one. People often ask me, how do I know if I have attained the first jhana? The answer is straightforward. As we mentioned earlier, only when all 5 jhana factors work harmoniously can we say we have attained the first jhana. Imagine you are looking for a rainbow. Before finding a rainbow, you might see red here, blue there, or a mix of colors. They might be beautiful hues, but they are not a rainbow. Only when the sunlight hits the clouds at the right angle, creating an arc with all the colors arranged as they should be, do you have a rainbow. Similarly, only when the conditions are right and all 5 jhana factors appear, can you say you have attained jhana. Some people think that a concentrated mind must be empty. They imagine the mind of a meditator must be devoid of feeling, like a stone. Nothing could be further from the truth. The mind in jhana is not inactive but vibrant. In the first jhana, the mind possesses the following intense characteristics: equanimity, a balanced feeling that is neither unpleasant nor pleasant; purity, with no concern for anything worldly like politics or romance; one-pointedness, mental states of contact, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness; energy, determination, effort, and mindfulness. A concentrated mind dwelling in itself generates powerful inner strength. Like a whirlpool, it creates an ever stronger column of water by turning on itself. This powerful inner strength is called concentration power. Consider, for example, the power of hydroelectricity. When a large amount of water flows through a small outlet, the concentrated force is so intense that it can move turbines to generate enough energy to light up a city. Because the water is not diffused to external objects, its energy accumulates within. Similarly, when the mind is not influenced by an external or internal object, its energy gathers within itself. Then the mind is like water forced through a small outlet. The concentration power of the mind is so great that it can directly observe the impermanence at the most fundamental, detailed, and subtle level of body and mind. The mind in jhana is such a wholesome state of one-pointedness. This intense concentration is not like when the mind is stuck to the meditation object. That would be attachment, which makes the mind agitated. This concentration is not the mind merging with the object, it is the mind merging with itself. The object is used as a lever to enter the mind. If the mind clings to an object, it is not wholesome, it is concentration with attachment. Unfortunately, that is the type of meditation some meditators practice, but it cannot lead to liberation. The first time you attain the first jhana, you will be so filled with rapture and happiness that these positive states will seem inseparable from the body. Like salt completely dissolved in water so that you cannot distinguish salt from water, when your entire body is filled with rapture and happiness, you cannot separate these feelings from the sensation in the body. The feeling of tranquility is so wonderful that you would want to remain in this state of concentration forever. The second jhana. After attaining the first jhana, I advise against trying to reach the second jhana immediately. This is a rather unwise action, akin to a futile spiritual ambition. Before moving on to the second jhana, you must perfect the first jhana. If you are too eager, you may not only fail to reach the second jhana, but also lose the ability to re-enter the first jhana. The Buddha compared an overly eager meditator to a cow that, unfamiliar with its current pasture, moves to another field. Consequently, this naive cow gets lost in the mountains, without food, water, and unable to find its way home. This is not the time to seek new excitements. It is the time to patiently train the mind. Therefore, when you attain the first jhana, you need to recall what you did to get there. This is where your mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness helps you remember the steps you practiced. If that state of concentration happened unexpectedly and you do not recall how you practiced, it is not true attainment. A teacher may believe you have attained one of the jhanas, but you should verify this for yourself. Do not easily accept opinions that others may freely declare. After reviewing your practice steps, you decide mindfully to attain the first jhana again, to maintain this state of concentration longer, and to determine when this state will end. After making these three decisions, practice the necessary steps to attain the first jhana multiple times. When repeating this process many times, you will no longer be concerned with initial and sustained application. This change may occur over one or several meditation sessions. For example, you have attained the first jhana 50 times, and each time you notice less concern for initial and sustained application. Then, in the 51st session, you completely disregard these two factors, paying no attention to them because you have lost interest in them. The moment this happens, the two factors disappear, meaning you have attained the second jhana. In the second jhana, there are no thoughts that disturb the mind and hinder one-pointedness. The remaining factors are stronger one-pointedness, rapture, and happiness. Rapture and happiness in the second jhana are less exuberant and more refined because they are no longer based on the mind's relief from overcoming hindrances. Now, rapture and happiness are based on concentration. A fresh sense of confidence also arises from the achievements made up to this moment. Confidence in your ability to progress, confidence in the method, and confidence in the Buddha's teachings. Concentration also gains strength. Imagine a cool lake fed by an underground spring. The pure spring water mixes with the cool lake water, keeping the lake clean and undisturbed. Similarly, in the second jhana, the sublime rapture and happiness brought by concentration continue to flow within the mind. The mind is nourished, and the body is entirely filled with rapture and happiness. The third jhana, using the same process as before, the meditator re-establishes the second jhana multiple times. The first time the second jhana is attained, the joy experienced is wonderful and fresh. However, repetition causes the joy to become monotonous. Gradually, you begin to lose interest in it. As a result, the factor of joy fades away. The moment joy leaves your mind, you attain the third jhana. Equanimity and concentration become stronger. This makes your mindfulness more stable and powerful. Your mind becomes filled with happiness at a deeper and more subtle level. For example, think of a lake full of blooming water lilies. These flowers are born in the water, live under the water, and are nourished by the depth of the water. They are completely saturated with water, both inside and out, every cell filled with water. Similarly, in the third jhana, your body is entirely saturated and filled with happiness. In the second jhana, there was some activity, some excitement, like the movement of the fresh stream water flowing into the lake. But in the third jhana, you no longer feel the need to be nourished by happiness from outside. The subtle happiness has the characteristic of calmness because happiness has completely filled the body and mind. The fourth jhana, just like before, the meditator repeats the third jhana multiple times until they no longer have any interest in pleasure. When pleasure fades away, mindfulness becomes even more clear due to the presence of equanimity, a state of perfect emotional balance, neither painful nor pleasurable. The meditator will realize that mindfulness and equanimity are purer than pleasure. When pleasure is completely relinquished, the meditator enters the fourth jhana, where mindfulness is purified by the power of equanimity. Recall that in the third jhana, equanimity was present, but because pleasure was not yet relinquished, equanimity was not strong enough to purify mindfulness. In the fourth jhana, the mind is entirely settled, tranquil, and steady. All negative mental states have been subdued, and the mind is no longer disturbed. The mind is clear and bright, enveloping the whole body like a white, clean, soft cloth wrapped around it. This clean, soft cloth is so gentle that you almost cannot feel it, yet it protects you from heat, cold, wind, and insects. Similarly, when the mind is clear and bright, nothing can cause it to become attached or angry. The mind maintains a state of detachment. Even if the body is bitten by insects or subjected to heat or cold, the mind remains unaffected. Even if someone pulls your robe or starts a conversation, the mind does not care about these disturbances and remains steady and undisturbed. At this point, the meditator understands the true power of concentration. The mind has been strengthened, purified, and freed from obstacles, and it is steady. The mind is flexible yet calm, strong, and sharp in its most important task. When the meditator focuses this concentrated mind on an object, they will see it as it truly is. In other words, this perfectly concentrated mind can penetrate the true nature of reality. The 4 levels of jhana are so wonderful that one might want to immerse in them to enjoy the bliss without considering directing the mind toward insight. However, if a meditator only focuses on bliss without developing ways to use concentrated mind, they limit the power of their concentration. Their concentrated mind remains wholesome, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if the meditator does not utilize their concentration well, it is like being given the fastest racehorse in the world, perfectly trained, and only using it for leisurely rides around the neighborhood. The mind attained through jhana is an incredibly valuable tool that should not be wasted. If, while in concentration, the meditator uses mindfulness to observe reality, this concentrated power can help them achieve liberation. Right mindfulness on right concentration. There are 3 best attitudes when practicing meditation. The first is to begin the meditation session with the effort to attain jhana, meditative absorption. Once that is achieved, the practitioner uses concentration to practice insight meditation, vipassana. This involves using concentration to observe the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature, the 3 marks of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. The second approach is to start the meditation session with insight meditation. When practicing vipassana, whenever an object arises, the practitioner observes it until it passes away, noting its impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature. Then the practitioner relaxes and returns to the primary meditation object, such as the breath. Each time the mind returns to the breath, it settles more deeply. If obstacles arise, the practitioner overcomes them, which also helps the mind settle. As the mind's agitation quiets down, the practitioner will no longer be interested in the objects that previously distracted the mind. These objects gently pass away in the mind's awareness. Gradually, the sign of concentration appears, followed by initial and sustained application of thought, and finally full concentration arises as described above. In that concentrated state, the practitioner continues to practice insight, observing the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and selflessness of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. The third approach is to start with either insight meditation or the effort to attain concentration and switch between the two methods. For example, one begins by focusing on the breath, disregarding other objects to achieve concentration. If unsuccessful and the mind becomes agitated, one then uses insight meditation to observe the changes in the feeling of agitation. When this feeling passes, one examines whether any other obstacles have arisen. Once the mind is stable, one returns to observing the breath more deeply, disregarding other objects if they arise, and makes another effort to attain concentration. Thus, in this third method, attention and mindfulness harmonize to gradually bring about deeper concentration and sharper insight. Eventually, when insight nearly perfects its seeing and concentration is nearly complete, the two will converge. Regardless of the method you use for meditation, mindfulness and concentration, when skillfully applied, will eventually unite and work together. If, when you sit down on the meditation cushion, you find that obstacles can be easily subdued and the mind is not distracted, then starting with concentration meditation is better. Conversely, if the mind is agitated and cannot be settled immediately, you should not attempt to develop concentration, but should start with insight meditation. Or, you can switch between the two methods. Begin with the one that aligns with your current state of mind. Regardless of the starting method, once mindfulness and concentration have combined, you need to use them to eliminate the first three fetters. Understanding that everything is selfless, you no longer believe in a permanent, unchanging self. You will see the futility of clinging to rites and rituals. You will understand the Four Noble Truths more clearly than ever before, and have no doubt about the Buddha's path to enlightenment. Use your concentrated mind like a laser beam to burn away a solid object. To aim the laser precisely, you need to use your eyes. If you are only looking around, you cannot aim accurately. Ultimately, either the wrong object is burned or nothing is burned at all. And of course, if you don't turn on the laser, even if you sit there all day, nothing will be burned. In this analogy, the eyes represent wisdom. The laser beam is concentration. Wisdom and concentration work together. Without wisdom, the light of concentration will scatter or aim at the wrong object. Without the light of concentration, even if the eye of wisdom sees the object, it cannot burn it. What are we trying to burn? Defilements, unwholesome mind states. We need to see them with the eye of wisdom and destroy them with the concentrated mind. Once you have attained right concentration, what do you focus on? You direct your concentrated, wholesome mind towards the continuous change of the components that make up the body and mind. Form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. You pay attention to the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of these components. When you focus on one of these components, you realize that they are all subject to change. You see the connection between impermanence and suffering due to your attachment to fleeting pleasures. Recognizing the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness is the primary task of insight meditation. When this task is accomplished, you will be freed from clinging to the aggregates that make up the body and mind. With nothing left to cling to, you are liberated. When meditators cultivate sufficient concentration and mindfulness, they can trace back in their minds the images of events, times, thoughts, and actions in the past until they recognize the connection between the continuous flow of the present and past events, thoughts, and actions. This connecting thread is craving and ignorance. They realize the relationship between impermanence, the craving for impermanent things, and suffering. The deep insight of the meditator also recognizes all negativities in all aspects and how and why they arise. Insight understands that all negativities come from clinging, and this clinging can end by ending one's own craving mind. Through this insight, the meditator directly experiences within themselves that everything is impermanent, that clinging to anything impermanent leads to suffering, and that all existing phenomena have no enduring essence. Understanding this way, we see the door to enlightenment. Applying concentration. On the night of enlightenment, the Buddha developed powerful concentration not to stop there but to apply it. In one intense, powerful moment, the three insights into impermanence, suffering, and non-self all burst forth, and the Buddha achieved his goal. Applying jhana is the key. Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta, the two former teachers of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha before enlightenment, had achieved concentration. However, they did not train themselves to direct their attention towards form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness to see their true nature. Instead, they became attached to the bliss of concentration and mistook that bliss for enlightenment. Prince Siddhartha Gautama noted that his previous teachers like him also possessed faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Like him, their wisdom helped them understand the dangers of obstacles and the necessity of overcoming them. But unlike Prince Siddhartha Gautama, they did not know that they were merely using concentration to suppress obstacles, not to eradicate them. They did not discover the latent fetters, the forces that bind beings to the endless cycle of birth and death. Only Prince Siddhartha Gautama used his concentration to clearly see how obstacles and fetters bind us. What understanding did the Buddha attain? As we know, the five hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry and doubt, prevent meditators from achieving jhana. Therefore, in practicing to develop concentration, meditators strive to set these aside. However, the latent fetters from which the hindrances arise continue to exist in our subconscious. The 10 fetters are belief in a permanent self, personality view, doubt, belief in the efficacy of rituals, clinging to rites and rituals, sensual desire, ill will, desire for rebirth in the form realm, desire for rebirth in the formless realm, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance. These unwholesome mental habits remain dormant while we meditate. Because these latent fetters still lie dormant in our consciousness, when we come out of meditation, the hindrances return. When we want to achieve jhana again, we have to set aside the hindrances once more. Thus, although we train the mind, we can set aside the hindrances more easily. It's like sweeping dust off a dirt floor. Even though we have just swept, dust soon returns. The floor continues to crack, the walls crack, and then we have another pile of dust. To get rid of the dust, we could sweep the whole house, sprinkle water on the floor, or pour a few buckets of water to turn the dirt into mud. However, the dust will return, but if we dig deep down to the rock layer, remove all the sand and dust, and then pour cement over it, the dirt dust will no longer be a problem. Digging up all the dirt is like insight meditation, overcoming both the hindrances and the fetters. Pouring cement symbolizes entering enlightenment, making the mind firm, unshakable by worldly temptations. Once this is done, nothing can disturb our mind. The teachers of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, Alara Kalama and Udaka Ramaputta, also possessed wisdom. They understood the dangers of sensual pleasures and the benefits of concentration, so they temporarily dispelled all hindrances and achieved jhana. However, these attainments were not enough to free them from the fetters binding them to the endless cycle of birth and death. Pure concentration alone cannot destroy the fetters. To destroy them, we must combine concentration, mindfulness, and insight. Otherwise, we will cling to the bliss of concentration, like the teachers of Prince Siddhartha Gautama, and not progress further. The Buddha's insight was unique. With this insight, he not only saw the dangers of sensual pleasures and the benefits of concentration, but he also used this wisdom to go beyond concentration. He used his wisdom to discover that the obstacles he had transformed in concentration were merely signs of a deeper, more powerful problem, the fetters. He saw how the fetters disturbed the mind, created illusions about reality, and led to suffering related to the self. With a pure mindful mind and concentration, he found a way to transform the fetters by seeing the impermanence, suffering, and non-self in all conditioned phenomena. When we see these three characteristics in every aspect of existence, craving, aversion, and ignorance, along with other fetters, will be eradicated forever. Don't deceive yourself. When we attempt to put the Buddha's teachings into practice, we must be careful not to deceive ourselves. Some people claim that when they go deep into concentration, they do not feel anything, hear anything, or have any thoughts. They say they sink so deeply into concentration that they lose track of time. At meditation retreats we organize, I have met such people swaying like fragile trees in the wind. Suddenly falling into an unconscious state is not called concentration. It is called sleeping. Some even snore. As soon as we ring the bell to end the meditation session, these meditators emerge from their deep concentration and say, "I had a wonderful meditation session. Today I reached the fourth jhana." Don't deceive yourself. That is just an illusion. If a meditator genuinely reaches any level of concentration, sleepiness vanishes, and the mind possesses all the positive qualities mentioned earlier. Concentration can only be achieved with intentional focus. You will clearly recognize the steps you went through to achieve meditative attainment. Thus, you can repeat those steps later whenever you wish. Meditation progresses through many stages, and only when that concentration is combined with mindfulness can it help you advance on the path to enlightenment. Moreover, don't deceive yourself into thinking that concentration is the same as enlightenment. Enlightenment is not so easy and quick. The meditator must go through the process of overcoming the hindrances, achieving concentration, and combining that still mind with insight to eradicate the hindrances and fetters. No matter how long you meditate, even if you reach the highest jhana, if you do not eradicate the fetters, you cannot achieve enlightenment, not even the initial stage of enlightenment. Finally, don't deceive yourself into thinking that mindfulness alone is sufficient to lead you to enlightenment. We cannot say, "I don't care about concentration or morality. I only need to practice mindfulness." Mindfulness cannot be separated from the other steps on the path. Those who do not practice the other steps of the Noble Eightfold Path often find that they cannot completely eliminate greed, hatred, and delusion, and thus, they do not succeed in their practice of mindfulness. Patient, those who strive to achieve one-pointed concentration to aid in their practice of insight meditation sometimes worry that they cannot achieve it. Do not be discouraged. Sometimes it takes years to reach concentration. If you meditate guided by mindfulness, you will feel at ease whether you attain concentration or not. Do not force yourself to create concentration. Every time you meditate, you get closer to concentration. How long it takes depends on how regularly you meditate and how well you practice the other branches of the Noble Eightfold Path. Some days you will focus well, and other days your mindfulness will be better. If you have attained concentration in the past, but do not meditate daily and have not truly mastered that concentrated mind, you may struggle to regain concentration when you try again. Worse still, if you let the hindrances, which you thought were dormant, become active again, or if you have engaged in unwholesome deeds, it will be almost impossible. On days when focusing on meditation is challenging, just be mindful of your active mind without worrying or saying you cannot meditate. Mindfully observing what is happening enhances your deep insight into the reality you are experiencing. As long as you continue to practice all the steps on the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, and keep striving without being attached to the effort to achieve concentration, you can trust that right concentration will gradually manifest. By using this versatile tool, you will attain ultimate happiness. Summary of right concentration. The key points to achieving happiness through right concentration are: right concentration has three characteristics: wholesome, one-pointed, and it operates with mindfulness. The Buddha taught us a gradual step-by-step method to attain right concentration. Wholesome concentration is the type that liberates us from greed, hatred, and delusion. The 5 hindrances are no longer present. To develop right concentration, first practice wholesome concentration by overcoming the hindrances. Focus on the breath or other chosen meditation objects and ignore newly arising objects. After practicing wholesome concentration for a while, your breath becomes very subtle, almost disappearing. The memory of the breath at the point of focus, like the tip of the nose, transforms into a pleasant sensation called the sign of concentration. One-pointedness refers to the mind focusing on itself after the sign of concentration has disappeared. One-pointedness is a factor of meditative absorption or jhana. The first level of meditative absorption, first jhana, is marked by the simultaneous operation of initial application, sustained application, rapture, pleasure, and concentration. At least the first jhana must be attained to reach enlightenment. Once you know how to achieve the first jhana, resolve to attain it again, decide how long to remain in this state and when to exit it. Practice achieving the first jhana multiple times until you fully master it. The second jhana arises when you have achieved the first jhana so many times that you lose interest in initial and sustained application, causing these factors to disappear. The third jhana arises when the repeated attainment of the second jhana causes the mind to lose interest in rapture. As rapture fades, pleasure becomes more subtle and equanimity becomes clearer. The fourth jhana arises when you lose interest in pleasure and your mindfulness becomes purified by profound equanimity. In the state of concentration, the mind is filled with wholesome, strong, determined qualities, not rigid like a rock, or as if someone is sleeping. Meditative absorption generates the quality and strength needed for insight meditation practice. Regardless of how long you remain in the strongest level of concentration, it alone will not bring enlightenment. To achieve enlightenment, you must destroy the fetters. You can begin a meditation session with either tranquility meditation to cultivate one-pointed concentration or with mindfulness practice, depending on your mind's stability that day. You can also switch between the two methods. No matter how you start a meditation session, concentration and mindfulness must work together to form complete wisdom. You need sharp discernment to recognize the impermanence, suffering, and non-self nature of all phenomena. Insight allows us to see the role of craving in causing suffering so that we can let go of it. Only concentration or only mindfulness cannot lead to enlightenment. Enlightenment occurs when concentration combines with mindfulness to destroy the fetters through insight. It may take just a few days or many years to achieve meditative absorption. Do not be discouraged if it takes time, and do not try to force it. Buddha reveals who you were in a previous life. Welcome back everyone to Mind Podcast. Have you ever wondered why some people are born into wealth and luxury, while others endure poverty and hardship all their lives? Or why some are blessed with good looks and robust health, while others are born unattractive or suffer from chronic illnesses? Is this randomness, a joke of fate, or is there a deeper reason behind it? Buddhism teaches the law of cause and effect, observing this life to understand previous lives and looking at the present to foresee the past and future. Each cause has its corresponding effect. Wealth and poverty, high or low status, are all results of one's karma from past lives. Who were we in our past lives? To find out and to learn how to shape our destiny and future, the Buddha explained 11 types of human karmic relationships. Over 2,500 years ago, after 49 days of meditation under the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha Gautama attained enlightenment. During his meditation, with a mind as clear as a mirror, he contemplated the nature of life and death, the causes of reincarnation, and the path to nirvana. He recalled his past lives, seeing hundreds of thousands of previous existences. He also observed the cycles of creation and destruction of many worlds. He saw how beings, depending on their good or bad karma, were reborn in different realms since the beginningless time. The Buddha knew he had deep karmic ties with his father, King Suddhodana, Queen Maya, and his wife, Princess Yasodhara. 1. A person with a clear, resonant, and expressive voice likely sang for the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, in a past life. 2. A person who is unintelligent in this life may have refused to be taught in a past life. 3. A person who serves others or is a slave in this life likely owes debts from past lives. 4. A person of low status and poverty in this life may not have shown respect to the three jewels in the past. 5. A person who is clean and free from illness in this life probably never harmed others and was compassionate in previous lives. Indeed, the Buddha's teachings are profound. From the 11 teachings above, we can see that those who enjoy blessings in this life have accrued merit over many past lives, while those who suffer have created negative karma in their past existences. Sometimes we meet good people who suffer from many misfortunes. Despite never harming anyone, they are repeatedly deceived by others. In such times, we might wonder why heaven is so unfair. But karma spans many lifetimes and cannot be understood by looking at just one life. Perhaps these people did many bad deeds in past lives, resulting in their current misfortunes. Everything in this world follows the law of karma and has its roots. The Buddha always encouraged us to do good deeds, live virtuously, and accumulate merit, as this ensures happiness in this life and beyond. The law of karma is impersonal, In the cycle of reincarnation, both bad karma and good karma follow us like a shadow. Past actions will shape future circumstances. Thus, accumulating virtue is planting seeds for a bright future. One should live in harmony with nature, letting go of attachments and worries, like the sea that embraces all rivers and the mountain that accepts the earth's embrace. However, letting go of attachments does not mean living irresponsibly or giving up on life. True renunciation is eliminating bad desires and thoughts, such as ambition for fame and wealth, jealousy, hatred, and selfishness. These are the things that bind people to suffering and lead to further negative karma. According to the Buddha, death is not the end but a transition to another life. Depending on one's karma, one may be reborn as a plant, animal, or human. Those who accumulate great merit can be reborn as humans and enjoy a happy, wealthy life. If fortunate enough to encounter the Dharma, it is a great blessing. Conversely, those who commit evil deeds will face suffering, illness, or poverty in future lives, or be reborn as animals to repay their karma. Your past life is not as important as what you achieve in this life. Don't lament your fate. Live peacefully and be content with what you have. If a virtuous person turns towards Buddhism and practices, they will certainly have a bright future. Over 2,500 years ago, in the kingdom of Magadha in southern India, during a banquet hosted by two nobles for the king and other aristocrats, a child sat in a revered position reserved for the most esteemed teachers. While everyone was astonished, it was revealed that this child was Sariputta, the son of the famous scholar Dasaka. Everyone thought the child was just naive, but he spoke clearly and wisely, impressing everyone. The king was so pleased that he immediately awarded the child a village. Sariputta was only 8 years old at the time. How did this intelligent child become the Buddha's foremost disciple and wisest follower? The true teacher. At the age of 8, Sariputta had already read all the books he could find in the world. As he grew up, there was nothing he didn't understand. He and his best friend, Maudgalyayan, played together, but they soon found even the most entertaining games boring and a waste of time. They eventually realized that solving the problem of life and death was the most important task. So the two traveled everywhere seeking teachers to learn the way, but no master could teach them for long. After just 2 or 3 days, the teachers would exhaust their knowledge. Sariputta and Maudgalyayan then established their own school, each with hundreds of disciples. They made a pact with each other. If either of us hears the true path first, he must inform the other without hiding it. One day, while Sariputta was walking in Rajagaha, he encountered the monk Ashvajit, a disciple of the Buddha who was out begging for alms. Ashvajit, clad in his monk's robe and holding his alms bowl, walked with a serene and dignified expression. Sariputta was so captivated by this sight that he couldn't take his eyes off him. He asked, "Venerable monk, may I ask who your teacher is and what teachings he imparts?" Ashvajit calmly replied, "My teacher is the Buddha, Shakyamuni. He teaches the truth about the universe and human life. I have not fully understood everything yet, but I remember that the Buddha often says, 'All phenomena arise from causes, and all phenomena cease due to causes.' The Buddha, the great teacher, always speaks thus." Just these few words made Sariputta feel as if the earth were shaking and the heavens were quaking. He immediately attained enlightenment and reached the first stage of sainthood known as Sotapanna. After attaining enlightenment, the Buddha initially spread his teachings in southern India, with the main base being Venuvana Monastery in Magadha. However, there was no base for teaching in northern India yet. The conditions came together when a wealthy man named Anathapindika in Shravasti in the north visited his friend in the south and sincerely took refuge in the Buddha. He vowed to build a monastery in the north to offer to the Buddha. Anathapindika used gold to cover the entire garden of Prince Jada in Rajagaha to buy the land for the construction. He then invited the Buddha to send someone to design and oversee the project. Knowing that the north was still dominated by non-Buddhist sects, the Buddha chose someone who could not only supervise the construction but also defeat the non-Buddhists in debates. That person was Sariputta. Indeed, soon after the construction of Jetavana Monastery began, the non-Buddhists gathered and challenged Sariputta to a debate. They said, if Sariputta wins, the monastery can be built. If he loses, it cannot. Anathapindika was deeply concerned, doubting that Sariputra alone could debate against so many non-Buddhists. However, Sariputra was delighted, seeing it as a great opportunity to propagate the Dharma. On the appointed day, the people of Shravasti flocked to watch, and the streets were empty. Tens of thousands of non-Buddhists gathered. Once everyone was seated, the debate began. Regardless of whether it was through supernatural powers or arguments, the non-Buddhists together were no match for Sariputra alone. In the end, many realized the truth and followed Sariputra. The construction of Jetavana Monastery progressed rapidly. One day, near completion, Sariputra told Anathapindika, "Although the monastery you are building for the Buddha is not yet complete, the heavenly palace created for you through this virtuous act is already finished." Sariputra used his divine eye to show Anathapindika the palaces in the heavens and explained that Tusita heaven was the best, with long-lived celestial beings and bodhisattvas often teaching the Dharma. Anathapindika vowed, "In the future, I will surely be reborn in Tusita heaven." As he spoke these words, all the other heavenly palaces gradually disappeared, leaving only the golden palace in Tusita heaven, shining in the sky. In one of his previous lives, there is a story about Sariputra's eye. At that time, Sariputra vowed to practice the bodhisattva path and to give generously. He gave away his house, land, and all his possessions to others. Finally, he was willing to give even his own body. His sincere and earnest wish moved a celestial being who wanted to test his resolve. One evening, the celestial being transformed into a young man and stood by the road where Sariputra would pass. When Sariputra arrived, the young man cried out in distress. Sariputra approached him and asked, "Young friend, why are you crying so sorrowfully? I am a renunciate who has vowed to alleviate the suffering of all beings. Whatever I have that can fulfill your wish, I will give it to you." The young man said, "My mother is suffering from an incurable disease, and the doctor said that only the eye of a renunciant can cure her. But how can I possibly obtain the eye of a living renunciant?" Sariputra replied, "This is no problem. I am willing to give you one of my eyes." Sariputra thought to himself, "I have two eyes. If I give away one, I will still have one left to see." So he told the young man to take his eye. The young man refused, saying, "How can I take your eye by force? If you are willing, you should pluck it out yourself and give it to me." Sariputra then used his hand to pluck out one of his eyes and handed it to the young man. However, the young man found the eye repulsive and ugly and was afraid to take it home to his mother. He then trampled on Sariputra's eye and walked away. Sariputra heard the young man's words and the sound of his eye being crushed underfoot. He sighed inwardly and thought, "It is difficult to help sentient beings. The bodhisattva's mind is hard to cultivate. I should not entertain grandiose notions of practicing the Mahayana path. For now, I will focus on my own practice." As Sariputra had this thought, many celestial beings appeared and said to him, "Renunciant, do not lose heart. That young man was a celestial being sent to test your resolve as a bodhisattva. You should be more determined in your practice." Hearing this, Sariputra's bodhisattva resolve was rekindled. For 60 lifetimes, Sariputra continuously practiced, and in this life, meeting the Buddha, he achieved the fruit of enlightenment and attained the divine eye. When Sariputra was nearly 80 years old, after spending 90 days in the summer retreat at Jetavana Monastery, he sought the Buddha's permission to travel and spread the Dharma. The Buddha praised and agreed. However, shortly after Sariputra left, a monk came to the Buddha and said, "Venerable Buddha, Sariputra did not leave to spread the Dharma. He left because he humiliated me and is too ashamed to face me." The Buddha did not approve of backbiting, so he immediately sent someone to recall Sariputra. In front of everyone, the Buddha sternly asked Sariputra, "Sariputra, before you left, a monk said you humiliated him. Is this true?" Sariputra respectfully replied, "World-honored one, since the day I took refuge in the Buddha, I have never killed, nor have I ever spoken arrogantly. Besides expounding the truth, I have never compared myself with others or concerned myself with personal gains and losses. Today is the final day of the summer retreat. Over the past 3 months, I have repented daily and maintained right mindfulness. My mind is as clear as jade, without any disrespect or contempt for others. World-honored one, The earth is the epitome of patience. It does not reject any impurities, whether they are excrement, blood, or pus. My mind today is like the earth, willing to endure patiently and not oppose others. Just as a pure stream washes away both good and bad things, my mind today has no discriminatory thoughts. In cleaning away dust and dirt, I do not distinguish between what I love or hate. My mind today truly does not generate such discriminations. World-honored one, I am in right mindfulness and have never looked down upon other monks. I am saying this to the Buddha because I understand my situation. The monk in question also knows his situation. If it is my fault, I am willing to repent to that monk to clear any guilt in my conscience. Upon hearing these words, everyone present was moved. The Buddha then addressed the monk who had slandered Sariputra, saying, "You have slandered Elder Sariputra and caused division within the Sangha. If you do not sincerely repent, the consequences will be severe." The monk knelt before Sariputra to apologize. With a magnanimous heart, Sariputra gently placed his hand on the monk's head and said with compassion and kindness, "Everyone makes mistakes. Recognizing and correcting them is a great virtue. I accept your repentance, but do not let it happen again." His demeanor and words deeply moved everyone. All three of Sariputra's brothers and three sisters joined the Buddha's monastic community and attained the state of Arhat. However, his mother harbored resentment towards the Buddha and his followers. When they came to her house for alms, she would give them food while scolding them. When the Buddha announced that he would soon enter nirvana, Sariputra decided that, as the chief disciple, he should enter nirvana before the Buddha. Yet, he had one important wish unfulfilled. With the Buddha's permission, he returned to his hometown of Nalaka in Magadha. There, he displayed symptoms of dysentery. At night, the four heavenly kings and Sakra, the king of the gods, came to his small house to care for him, but he declined their help. Seeing these deities visit her son, his mother was astonished, thinking, "Could my son be greater than these deities?" She asked her son, and Sariputra confirmed it. She then wondered, "If my son has cultivated to this level, how much higher must his teacher have cultivated?" Seeing that the time was ripe, Sariputra explained the Buddha's teachings to his mother. She immediately attained the first stage of sainthood. Sariputra peacefully left the world at the age of 84. 10 Teachings of the Buddha for a Peaceful Life. It is said that the Buddha Shakyamuni lived around the 5th century BCE in what is now India. Before his enlightenment, he was a prince, living a life of luxury with a beautiful wife and a son, enjoying all the wealth and honor that people desired. However, with boundless compassion, he renounced his prosperous and noble life, embarking on a difficult and arduous journey to seek enlightenment. Finally, he realized the truth of the universe and spread the Dharma to save sentient beings. Throughout his life, he witnessed countless sufferings and injustices. Each person who came to him for help received different guidance and advice. Every teaching of the Buddha is a precious summary of the wisdom he acquired during his 80 years of life, aimed at helping those who strive to improve themselves and achieve a better life. Here are 10 life lessons distilled from the Buddha's teachings. Number 1. Love can heal. All the Buddha said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love." This is the eternal rule. True love is the foundation of lasting happiness. It has the power to heal, transform every situation around us, and give life deep meaning. Love is the only thing in this world that can heal all wounds. Love here is not limited to romantic feelings, but extends to love between people and all living things. Living with compassion, forgiveness, and sincerity can resolve even the greatest conflicts, leading to a much happier life. 2. Live in the present. The Buddha said, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment." He also said, "The secret of health for both mind and body is not to mourn for the past, nor to worry about the future, but to live the present moment wisely and earnestly." Indeed, people are often hurt by past traumas or worried about uncertain future events, forgetting that the present moment is what truly needs our attention and care. Living fully and joyfully in each moment can free our minds from unnecessary burdens. 3. Understanding yourself is wisdom. Throughout his life, the Buddha believed that the greatest victory was overcoming oneself. Before understanding others, one must understand oneself. He taught that understanding others is wisdom, but understanding oneself is enlightenment. A person who doesn't know what they want or need, or why they act as they do, is like a ship drifting aimlessly on the water. 4. Be mindful of your words. The Buddha taught that words have the power to destroy and to heal. When words are both true and kind, they can change our world. Thus, it is crucial to practice mindful speech. The ancients said, "Illness enters through the mouth, misfortune comes out of it." They advised to think carefully before speaking. Therefore, we must speak with reason and consider the consequences. Before speaking, consider 1. Is it the right time? 2. Is it true? 3. Is it beneficial? 4. Is it kind? Avoid harsh words under the guise of speaking the truth, because words reflect our inner state. Every word should be both well-intended and pleasantly spoken to bring good to others and ourselves. 5. Personal experience is the ultimate filter. Humans are prone to confusion and often make mistakes. The Buddha said that one should never immediately believe what others say, even if they are highly respected or deeply loved and trusted. Advice is only for reference and may not be correct when applied to our circumstances. Take time to observe, analyze, and draw your conclusions. Always take responsibility for your decisions and actions. 6. The truth will ultimately come to light. The Buddha said that 3 things cannot be hidden for long: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Therefore, when misunderstood, do not get angry, impatient, or distressed. Eventually, the truth will reveal itself and explain everything. Likewise, do not engage in deceit and lies, as a needle in a bundle will eventually poke out. No matter what you do, even if you can hide it temporarily, the truth will be exposed sooner or later, and you will have to face the consequences of your actions. 7. Do not get angry, learn to forgive others. The Buddha taught, anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Anger is unavoidable in daily life. When anger arises, if we do not control our emotions, it can flare up like a fire and destroy everything. It makes us say harsh words and perform regrettable actions, leading to unnecessary consequences. Therefore, always remain calm in the face of challenges. Do not get angry, but learn to forgive and be compassionate towards others. This is the simplest way to free yourself from burdens and worries. As long as you are angry, resentful, and hateful towards others, you waste energy thinking about them. Learn to forgive and quickly forget unpleasant things. Anger is like holding a burning coal. The person throwing it might get burnt, but your hand will be harmed first. Number 8. Choose your friends wisely. The Buddha always advised people to be kind and gentle to everyone. However, choosing friends requires wise selection. A good friend can make our lives happier, while a bad friend can cause trouble, disaster, and negativity. Therefore, avoid associating with those who complain, criticize, are ungrateful, selfish, and deceitful. If you wish to have good friends, you must strive to be a genuinely good person yourself, as you attract those similar to you. 9. Be grateful for everything in life. Every experience, whether good or bad, has positive impacts on us and teaches us valuable, sometimes priceless, lessons. Therefore, accept them with gratitude instead of disappointment, frustration, or blame. The Buddha said, "Be grateful, for if you haven't learned much today, you've still learned a little. If you haven't learned anything, be grateful for your health. If you're ill, be grateful that you're still alive." Remember, a heart full of gratitude makes you great. 10. Peace comes from within. Do not waste time searching for it. Everyone has goals to pursue in life. Chasing work passions can make us feel weary due to invisible pressures. At such times, we crave a sense of peace and relaxation. But living in a bustling world, where can we find true peace? Although seemingly simple, not everyone can answer this easily. According to the Buddha, peace must come from our minds, not from others. Therefore, do not seek peace outside. Nurture your soul from within. Spend quiet time to reflect on everything. Simple ways to find peace include setting work aside and spending quality time with loved ones. Regularly meditate, as it is an effective method to nourish both mind and body, gently and simply. Why can't practitioners use supernatural powers to resolve grudges? Venerable Moggallana was the foremost in supernatural powers with inconceivable abilities. He once used his toe to press down on King Sakra's palace, causing it to shake and collapse. So why didn't he use these powers to deal with thuds attacking him? Legend has it that during the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, Among his 10 foremost disciples with extraordinary powers, Venerable Moggallana and Sariputta were the most outstanding in the monastic community. When the Buddha attained enlightenment, countless people turned towards him. Among his ordained disciples, numbering in the thousands, each had their strengths and vows, and Moggallana and Sariputta stood out. Moggallana's supernatural powers and Sariputta's wisdom were unrivaled. The Buddha often praised their achievements. Moggallana and Sariputta, close companions, frequently visited various realms, using their powers and wisdom to rescue those in suffering and educate sentient beings. One day, the two venerables went to the uninterrupted hell. The temperature in the hell was extremely high, like a furnace, with flames raging fiercely. The heat from the boiling oil cauldrons continuously spread out, enveloping the entire area. The people suffering the punishment screamed and wailed day and night, with cries of sorrow echoing endlessly, creating a horrific and ghastly scene. Sariputta and Moggallana, moved by compassion, used their powers to rain down holy water to purify them. However, the suffering from their evil karmic debt only temporarily paused. At that moment, they saw a particularly fearsome sinner with a human body and a demon's face. The figure was huge and grotesque, with a tongue that was wide and long. Inside the mouth, 500 red-hot iron plows were plowing the tongue as if it were a barren field, leaving the tongue torn and bleeding profusely. It was an extremely frightening sight. This sinner, upon seeing Sariputta and Moggallana, rejoiced as if he had found a treasure. He hurriedly ran over and pleaded, "O venerable ones, I am called Bolina. When I was alive, I was a preacher who propagated atheistic teachings and blasphemed against the Dharma. As a result, I am suffering this torment today. I beg you, if you pass through Jambudvipa, please compassionately tell my disciples not to deny the supreme beings in ignorance, and not to use deceitful words to poison the people, blaspheme the sacred, or rely on factions to oppress practitioners, for this will only increase my suffering here." Moggallana, raising his hand to stop the violent mob, said, "We have just come from the uninterrupted hell and saw your master Bolina suffering immensely. His tongue is continuously plowed by 500 red-hot iron plows, causing him unbearable pain. He asked me to tell you to stop blaspheming the Dharma, to cease deceiving the people, and to avoid following his sinful path, to avoid hellish torment, and to lessen his suffering." Out of goodwill, Moggallana conveyed Bolina's message, hoping that it might lead the evil people to repentance and relieve the grievances between them. Unexpectedly, as he finished speaking, the thugs ferociously attacked him, shouting, "Beat him! He dares to insult our master! He threatens our interests! Beat him!" Sticks, stones, and other objects rained down on Moggallana, injuring him severely. Despite his immense supernatural powers, Moggallana did not use them to defend himself. After being assaulted, he went into the city to beg for alms and returned to the monastery to eat. After tidying up his bowl and robe, he went to see the Buddha. He bowed deeply before the world-honored one and said, "I have just repaid my worldly karmic debt. Soon, Sariputta will enter nirvana. We have been the closest companions in this human world, and I believe it won't be long before I too will attain fulfillment and depart. Please forgive your disciple." With the most sincere reverence, Moggallana circumambulated the Buddha 3 times clockwise, bowing respectfully before returning to his hometown to bid farewell to his family, friends, and teach those with affinity. Shortly afterward, he ascended Mount Gridrakuta and entered nirvana. Later, within the monastic community, the Buddha recounted the story Beating One, Releasing One, which was a past life tale of Sariputta and Moggallana. In ancient times, there were 2 practitioners. One day they passed through a village known for its unruly and arrogant youth. Seeing the 2 approaching, the youths conspired to trouble them. Blocking the first practitioner, they asked, "When will the weather return to normal?" The first practitioner smiled and replied, "Regardless of spring, summer, autumn, or winter, those who feel the wind and rain will feel cold." The youths let him pass. They then blocked the second practitioner and asked, "When will it get cold?" He replied, "In winter, the weather is cold. The sun, moon, and stars rotate naturally. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter follow in sequence. In winter, it gets cold. This is a constant law of nature, known to all except the ignorant." The youths, displeased, began throwing stones and dirt at the second practitioner. After many lifetimes of reincarnation, the first practitioner became Sariputta and the second, Moggallana. The incidents resembled what happened today. The Buddha, knowing that many people doubted the supernatural powers of practitioners because Moggallana did not use them to resist the thuds, continued, "Do not doubt. The wondrous use of supernatural powers is not false. With such powers, the Venerable could fly to the heavens or enter the earth, transform freely without obstruction." Moggallana retained his supernatural powers but chose not to use them against his karmic debt. Even the Tathagata does not go against the law of cause and effect. When karmic retribution arises, one must accept it. Conforming to cause and effect aligns with the law of the universe. Moreover, our practice also emphasizes compassion. Accept karmic retribution with joy, do not evade it, and do not resent those who bring it. Understanding the severity of karmic retribution should inspire diligent practice and careful conduct. Moggallana, understanding my teachings deeply, refrained from using supernatural powers to evade his karmic debts. This is commendable and serves as a lesson for you all. Dear audience, the ancients said, "One can disturb the waters of 1,000 rivers, but do not disturb the mind of a practitioner." It has always been forbidden to act against heaven's principles, blaspheme the Dharma, or persecute practitioners. Boliner, during his life, was a preacher who spread atheistic doctrines and blasphemed the Dharma, hence his severe suffering. His disciples, continuing their evil deeds in ignorance, deceiving people, blaspheming the divine, and persecuting practitioners, cannot avoid destruction and immense suffering in countless future lives. Venerable Moggallana, considered one of Shakyamuni Buddha's foremost disciples in supernatural powers, did not use them to resolve grudges or deal with the wicked. For a highly accomplished practitioner like Moggallana, he understood karmic relationships, the law of cause and effect, and the recompense for good and evil deeds. He did not want to use supernatural powers against ordinary people. This exemplifies the virtues of patience, wisdom, and compassion of the enlightened. According to the Buddha's teachings, supernatural powers among practitioners are not unheard of. However, in the practice of righteous paths, whether in Buddhism or Taoism, moral character must be high, and virtue must be great to develop supernatural powers. As Shakyamuni Buddha taught, do not doubt the wondrous use of supernatural powers, they are not false. However, developing supernatural powers is not the ultimate goal of practitioners. Aligning with the universe's characteristics to attain fulfillment is fundamental. Those with supernatural powers do not flaunt them. To those familiar with the practice, it is profound. To outsiders, it appears as a spectacle. Encountering the great Dharma and stepping onto the righteous path, one will understand this principle. Why do Jesus and the primordial celestial Buddha have halos? Our story begins with Professor Konstantin, a quantum physics professor at the National Technical University of Ukraine, Kharkiv Polytechnic Institute. One day, after an accidental leg injury forced him to stay in the hospital for months, he pondered a question. Why does Jesus have a halo above his head? Why do statues of the Buddha in India, China, and South America also have such halos? Is this a mere coincidence, or is there a hidden secret? This seemingly simple thought led him to an unprecedented invention in the history of modern science. Hello, dear viewers of East, West, Ancient, and Modern. Have you ever wondered about this question? It is indeed an unbelievable coincidence that, regardless of culture or country, the enlightened beings and deities worldwide all have a beautiful, radiant halo above their heads. Why do these halos appear? Can ordinary people have such halos around their bodies? All mysteries of this miraculous light will be unveiled in today's video. Please stay tuned. The quantum physics professor and his research journey on the halo phenomenon. The halo phenomenon is originally a mystical aspect of spiritual practices. So why is a quantum physics professor interested in this? It turns out he had read a report by Russian electrical engineer Semyon Kirlian about the glowing phenomenon on the human body. In 1939, Kirlian accidentally discovered the phenomenon of glowing when he placed a high-voltage, high-frequency electrode near a patient's skin. Subsequently, he invented the technique of photographing the halo of an object by placing it on a metal plate covered with photographic film, and then passing an electric current through the plate. After many years of research, Kirlian found that the state of the halo also reflected a person's health status. Less halo meant the body was unhealthy and possibly ill. However, for over 20 years, the mainstream scientific community in the Soviet Union did not value Kirlian's research. They thought, how could a few halos determine a person's illness? This was entirely meaningless. In 1964, Kirlian published his first report on the halo phenomenon, which garnered scientific interest. He scientifically explained the presence of a halo around the human body. He explained that this halo not only reflected a person's health, but also their complex personality and mood. The report was then covered by the press, making his bioelectrography technique famous. His photography method was widely used, especially in medical and space fields. Extraordinary invention. This method was recognized by many Western scientists, including Professor Konstantin Korotkov of the National Technical University of Ukraine. He wondered whether the human body's light was related to the legendary halos of gods. Initially, the effect discovered by Kirlian did not always capture the exact halo, as various factors affected the photo's outcome, such as the type of film, voltage, good electrical conductors, lighting duration, exposure time, air humidity, and even the order of photography. Korotkov spent months researching and eventually developed a system for capturing and depicting the human body's halo, known as GDV. After improvements, the halo photography device became more stable and accurate, allowing people to diagnose illnesses by observing the halo. For instance, when a person is calm, their body emits a pale blue light. When angry, the body emits an orange light. When scared, the body emits a red light. When lying, the light appears chaotic. If a person is ill, their body's light gradually fades. If the light disappears entirely, the person is seriously ill. Interestingly, when a couple is in love, their light becomes brighter and pink. When they hold hands, their halos intertwine. Conversely, if two people have no emotional connection, such as strangers, there will be a gap between their halos. Thus, true love can emit a light that makes the world more beautiful and bright. Why does the human body emit a halo? Besides the aforementioned Western scientists, there is an Eastern group of professors researching this phenomenon, led by Professor Zhang Shuijun of Anhui University. He and his team discovered that the human body has inherent light sources. The meridian points spread throughout the body. There are 741 such points, with 7 major ones running from the top of the head to the dantian. The ancients had long discovered this. If the 7 major points are activated, the emitted light will be the divine halo. To activate these points, one must meditate and cultivate. Moreover, this light does not require photography. It can be observed with the naked eye, proving its incredibly strong radiance. Buddhist scriptures also record that the entire human body can emit light. The mystery of the halo, around Shakyamuni Buddha. In Buddhist scriptures, the Buddha's entire body emits a halo, not just the head. This light can illuminate everywhere. When the Buddha was teaching, his body did not emit light. It only became visible at nirvana. His light shone throughout the 3,000 great thousand worlds, blessing all beings with his wisdom and compassion. The Buddha said all beings have Buddha nature, but our awareness and spirituality have not reached that level. So humans do not have a halo like the Buddha. By cultivating and meditating, letting go of human attachments and desires, our hearts and souls can become pure, filled with compassion and wisdom. Achieving this allows human light to transform into the divine halo. Both Buddhism and Taoism have methods to restore the body's halo. Taoism teaches that by returning to one's true nature, one can live long, even achieve immortality. Why didn't Moggallana use supernatural powers to resolve grudges? Venerable Moggallana was one of Shakyamuni Buddha's foremost disciples in supernatural powers, but did not use them to deal with thugs. He understood karmic relationships, the law of cause and effect, and the recompense for good and evil deeds. He did not want to use supernatural powers against ordinary people. This exemplifies the virtues of patience, wisdom, and compassion of the enlightened. In line with the Buddha's teachings, supernatural powers among practitioners are not unheard of. However, in the practice of righteous paths, moral character must be high, and virtue must be great to develop supernatural powers. As Shakyamuni Buddha taught, do not doubt the wondrous use of supernatural powers. They are not false. However, developing supernatural powers is not the ultimate goal of practitioners. Aligning with the universe's characteristics to attain fulfillment is fundamental. Those with supernatural powers do not flaunt them. Encountering the great Dharma and stepping onto the righteous path, one will understand this principle. One day at noon, after the Buddha had finished alms round, he was returning to the forest where he resided to have his meal when a Brahmin, who worshipped the fire god, approached from the opposite direction. When the Brahmin saw the Buddha, he was suddenly struck and mesmerized by the Buddha's solemnity, handsome appearance, and noble demeanor. This Brahmin, who was skilled in physiognomy, observed the Buddha closely, from top to bottom and from bottom to top. He saw that the Buddha possessed all the marks of a great man, full of merit, virtue, and wisdom. If he were not a renunciate, he would surely become a great king, unifying the world. Thinking of his extraordinarily beautiful daughter, whom he had not yet found a suitable match for, he decided he wanted to offer her in marriage to the Buddha. The Brahmin approached the Buddha and said, "O monk, I see that you are dignified, noble, and possess all the marks of a great man, full of merit, virtue, and wisdom. In the future, you will surely become a great king, enjoying endless riches and glory. I have a daughter with the beauty of a queen, who would make a perfect match for you. Please come to my home, and I will give you my daughter in marriage." The Buddha replied, "O noble Brahmin, thank you for your kind offer. I am a renunciate, completely uninterested in worldly life. I prefer the pure and untainted life of a monk." The Brahmin said, "O monk, you don't understand. My daughter is not just ordinarily beautiful. Any man who sees her is captivated by her beauty and wants to marry her. She is now 16 years old. I am confident that if you see my daughter, you will love her and abandon your renunciation to marry her. If you don't believe me, wait here a moment. I will immediately bring my daughter to meet you." The Buddha replied, "Very well." The Brahmin hurriedly ran home and told his wife, "Dear wife, today I have found a good husband for our daughter. He has the marks of a great man, the most handsome person I have ever seen. Quickly call our daughter, dress her up beautifully, and bring her to him." His wife asked, "What has gotten into you today? Why are you so hastily giving our daughter away? Our daughter is a peerless beauty." The Brahmin said, "Don't worry, my dear wife. I am very responsible regarding our daughter. Dress her up beautifully and bring her to him. When you see him, you will understand everything I said." Their daughter, named Makamdara, was as beautiful as a heavenly fairy. After being carefully dressed up by her parents, she looked even more beautiful than a fairy. The Brahmin led his wife and daughter to where he had met the Buddha. Not finding the Buddha there, they saw 2 lines of footprints on the ground. They followed the footprints and found the Buddha sitting under a large tree, eyes closed. The Brahmin hurriedly ran to the Buddha and said, "O monk, I have brought my wife and daughter. Look at her beauty. I now officially offer my daughter to you." Makamdara, beautiful as she was, immediately admired the Buddha's noble and dignified appearance. But the Buddha, who had long abandoned all desires, only slightly opened his eyes to look at the Brahmin's wife and daughter, and asked, "O noble Brahmin, please tell me which one is your daughter and which is your wife." The Brahmin, astonished, said, "The young and beautiful one is my daughter. The older one with wrinkles is my wife. How can you not distinguish such obvious differences?" The Buddha said, "Oh, I see. The older one is your wife, and the younger one is your daughter. Now tell me, what was your wife like 40 years ago?" The Brahmin replied, 40 years ago, my wife was as young and beautiful as my daughter is now." The Buddha asked, "What will your daughter be like 40 years from now?" The Brahmin said, 40 years from now, with age, my daughter will also have a face full of wrinkles like my wife today." The Buddha said, "Therefore, I see that they differ only in age, not in beauty or ugliness. Indeed, your daughter is very beautiful. Other men will be moved by her, but I will not. When I attained enlightenment, I saw all the dangers of desire. It is a trap of beauty. Those who fall into it will be engulfed and swallowed. It is like a rose on a steep cliff. Those who try to pick it will fall into the abyss and be destroyed. The worldly people do not know the dangers of desire, pursuing it endlessly, never escaping the cycle of birth and death. Many heroes and great men have been ruined by it. Knowing its dangers, I will never fall into the trap of beauty. The Buddha looked at Makamdera and said, "Young lady, do not desire. It is the main cause of samsara, the source of suffering. Look at my serene face, and you will extinguish desire and find peace and harmony." However, Makamdera, proud and ambitious, lacking the foundation of goodness, felt deeply insulted. She thought, "If he does not want me, so be it, but he speaks as if I am worthless. This is a great insult to me." Furious, she turned and ran home, harboring hatred for the Buddha. Later, Makamdera, leveraging her unparalleled beauty, married the king of Udinama and became the queen. Dealing with those who insult you. The following year, when the Buddha came to the capital of Udinama to teach, Makamdera sought revenge. She used gold and silver to hire a group of thugs to insult the Buddha with vile language. No matter where the Buddha went, these people followed and cursed him. Despite their insults, the Buddha continued to smile and respond with calmness. Ananda, unable to tolerate the filthy words, said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, let us leave this place and go elsewhere." The Buddha asked, "Ananda, where should we go?" Ananda replied, "To a place where no one curses us." The Buddha said, "And if there are people who curse us there, where will we go next? The problem should be resolved where it arises. Only then can we go elsewhere." One day at noon, while the Buddha was on alms round, the thugs climbed the trees along his path and cursed wildly, shaking the trees so that dew fell on the Buddha, drenching him and his alms bowl. Despite this, the Buddha continued to smile and walk steadily forward. Suddenly, there was a thud, followed by a loud cry, "Oh!" The cursing stopped. The most aggressive thud had fallen from the tree. He struggled to stand but couldn't. The Buddha approached, helped him up, and found that he was severely injured and needed urgent treatment. The Buddha supported him into the city and took him to the best surgeon, Bishara. Seeing the Buddha, Bishara stood up and offered his seat, inviting the Buddha to sit with a clean cloth. Bishara respectfully stood by. When the Buddha asked Bishara to treat the injured man, Bishara refused, saying, "Venerable Buddha, I know what has been happening these days. This man is the one who insulted you most fiercely. His fall and injury are well deserved." The Buddha said, "Please do not think that way. When they used the most vicious words to insult me, and when they drenched me with dew, I held no resentment against them and did not consider their actions as insults. I still regard them as my good brothers. Now, my good brother is severely injured and desperate. I must help him. Please treat his injury." The thugs, hearing this, immediately knelt down, weeping and repenting for their wrongdoings. They witnessed everything firsthand and understood what true goodness and beauty were. They pulled out the gold coins Makamdera had given them and threw them into the trash, determined to correct their past mistakes and start anew. The Buddha smiled, nodded gently, and helped each of them stand up. You have just witnessed the noble conduct and great kindness of the Buddha when insulted. He held no resentment and sincerely cared for those who insulted him. When the insulter fell, he moved them to repent and abandon their wrong ways. Similarly, when we encounter people who treat us poorly, we should not retaliate in kind, to avoid endless grudges and to possibly turn enemies into friends, transforming their evil hearts. What lessons have you learned from this video? Please leave your comments below.